this is Roger, thanks for dropping by. I said I'd give you all a laugh, didn't I? Well, we're going to try and get this Cattleya out of this pot, and I only need 2 tools for this. This is one of them, to get the nerve up. I had a busy day today already. And this is the other one. Now of course I should be wearing goggles to do this, but do you really think I'm going to waste a holy clay pot? It's as valuable to me as the plant. There's no way I'm breaking the pot. I'll break the plant first. Right, that's got that silly idea out of the way. Now this has had a bit of a soak. The idea is that hopefully it would have loosened some of the roots that have attached to the pot, because otherwise it's going to make life incredibly difficult trying to get the plant out. But I'm pretty confident that anything that's attached to the pot is just going to have to be sacrificed, because they've not only got to detach from the pot, which they don't seem inclined to do. Some of the ends are undoing, but you know, you have to sort of think this root goes right round here and in there. What are the chances of getting that back through the hole without damaging it? And the chances are practically zero, quite honestly. So unfortunately, although this is an extensive external root system, it's probably going to have to go. But the real tools I need is that this plant was wired in place with heavy wire, very tall, very top heavy plant. So the first thing to do is get the wires out of the way. Let's see if I can pull that back. I can't even see where that wire goes. Woo! As I said, it's a top heavy plant. And it goes back to there, but I can't remember how I actually attached it. Well, let's just cut it there so that whichever way it wants to pull, it can go either way then. Separate those. It's got curly ends. It's not going to pull back through with a curly end on it. Right, that's the bit that's moving. So that goes back through that tiny little hole. I can't believe a root managed to get through that hole as well. Okay, that's going to have to stay there. Oh no, it's come out. That's one. Right. Where did the other end go? The other end went down there. So that's 2 pieces, but we had another one that held the back end of the plant in place. Let's see if I can unthread that. Now, where does that bit go? It goes down there. It's completely entangled with roots, but we'll cut it anyway. Why I'm trying to get the wire out first is that I'm very liable to catch my fingers on the sharp ends. So I'm just trying to de-risk it for myself. That bit should come out quite easy. Right, that's the wires done. Next job, turn it upside down and see how much of the media is going to come out, and I bet it's hardly any. Yep, just as I thought, hardly any. This plant is absolutely entrenched in this pot. This could be impossible. I'm certainly not. Sacrificing the pot will be the last resort. Next job. Okay, this is going to muck up some roots, but try and just get a knife down around the edges and see how many roots that detaches. That's going to, any roots that are going out through holes higher up the pot are now going to be cut, so anything that's outside the pot will be lost at this point. Any that go through the lower holes might pull back through, they might not. I'm just going around to see how much of this will come off. Come on. It's so entrenched in there, the knife goes in there, it won't even come out. Of course, as soon as the plant starts to move, I will have to go extremely careful because I don't want to damage my new roots. They are precious. a lot of root strength going on here. A hell of a root loss, but it's such a vigorous plant. I would envisage a new root system coming back on this plant very quickly. And how far did I get? Around to about there, didn't I? Right. Now let's see if it will come out. Oh, it's still absolutely entrenched. It's not even wobbling yet. So I've even got some roots going right down and out the hole in the bottom. I'm just now forcibly detaching everything, making sure that nothing's being held on the outside. I don't know whether to just cut these roots, quite honestly. That's the last bit of the wire, and just have done with it. They would be so badly damaged by the time I've finished, I doubt if they'll be much good. A lot of these are older roots. Just noticed another piece of wire. It's probably holding on to something as well. Oh, you come out then. The plant's grown round it, I think. Right, have we got any movement yet? I can hear cracking noises now. I'm only grabbing hold of the back end of the plant because that's the bit that is probably... Here we go. Now we go ultra careful so that we don't wiggle the plant and break those new roots. Gotcha. A lot of these roots are pulling back through, but I don't think they will be of any use, unfortunately. Oh boy, oh boy. Well, that's got it out. See, these are... I always say don't cut Cattleya roots if they feel firm, but there comes a point where something's got to give. Now this had a not brilliant root. Ah, now we know why it was hanging on in there. A rock in the bottom. That's because it was so top heavy. Most of the media in the middle is unlikely to have any good roots around it, and the back end of the plant certainly won't have any good roots around it, so I can go mad at the back end of the plant. Most of these roots are coming off because the back end of the plant is coming off effectively, so those roots are not precious. They're going to go anyway. And I've got to decide where to cut the plant in a minute. So this bark isn't broken down, there's nothing wrong with it. The only reason this is coming out of the pot is because it was growing out of the pot, and the next new growth would be outside along with its new set of roots. Now I could have just let it go, but it would just continually keep falling over. You know, and once you start getting flower spikes and stuff like that, a plant that keeps tipping is it's just going to get damaged. In the long term, it's not safe for a plant that's top heavy. I could stand it in a larger clay pot, try and keep it upright. So I don't want to go mad where these new roots are. And the front end of the plant has got the roots that can probably be saved. I'm getting to the point now where I can see what I'm doing and I can decide where to cut the back end of the plant off. That will save me untangling a lot of roots. I'm probably not going to be able to show you this very well. Working backwards, new growth, new roots, yes? Last one that bloomed. One before that bloomed. One before that bloomed. And quite honestly, anything behind that could be sacrificed. Coming from the back end of the plant, the lead split here. This one's a dead end. That's a shriveled bulb with a really manky leaf on it, so that's not required. It headed off in this direction and at that point decided to become a bifoliate, which it is basically. That is a dead end because the only eye on there has turned brown. So that eye there isn't going to shoot, so that bulb is no good. That bulb is no good. When I bought it, this was one of the leads with a new growth. That's the new growth that was broken in transport getting it to the point of sale. So that has no eye on it. Yeah, that was lost there. So that bulb's no good. Right, so let's make a start, because until I can see the wood for the trees, so I know that bulb's not wanted, so you can come off. This will be interesting to see. When I got this plant it had fusarium, oh fluffy cat, and it was treated, but I'm working on the old part of the plant now, so I'd still expect to see fusarium in this part of the rhizome. Oh! Which I can see. It's very faint. Very faint. Oh. Right, so that's the old part of the plant off. I'm just going to have these roots there. They're all old ones. So as I can see what I'm doing. Right, so we don't need that. And there are no viable eyes on that back end, so all you people who think I should pot up the back end of the things, I mean in theory it could produce an eye. Now this is the problem I've got now. I don't want to go back and take that off. But look at the pair of leaves on that back end. They're awful. But to take the two pseudo bulbs off with the manky leaves, it only leaves me two pseudo bulbs, which is cutting it a bit fine. Let's have a look for some eyes, shall we? There's potentially one there. What about on this little spindly one round here? I don't see anything there. Which comes back to just leaving me with two bulbs with a new growth. But that would give me two very nice pairs of leaves and an incredibly nice looking plant from now on. To leave these two bulbs on leaves me with a manky, tatty looking plant. And although we grow our plants for our blooms, it's nice to have a plant that looks nice. And if I cut there, which is what I've seriously got in mind, and just leave the two latest growths, in theory we might have also moved beyond where the fusarium is. I know this seems really dramatic to everybody, but this is a vigorous plant, and it's highly likely that given the damage to the rhizome, it's possible that might shoot. The plant is capable of splitting. It can do it, it's done it before. Decision. Yep, it's coming off. We'll start the plant again, effectively. I didn't pay much for this plant. We've had quite a few blooms on it in the past and we've enjoyed them. See? No pink. It's grown out of it. So back end of the plant, still some signs. Front end of the plant, clean. Now that don't leave a lot, but what it does leave isn't bad at all. And I'm not even going to cut those roots because they are relatively new roots and they are probably capable of branching once they get in some media. Now, the plant will trigger some stuff now because it will register the fact that it's got some serious damage. So in theory it should start dealing with some of these roots. So I'm just taking this off because it's been cut. It was part of the old rhizome. It just happened to be attached. Right, the bits of bark that are still there can stay there. So that's what we've got left. I know that's it. Let me just put that to one side where those little roots can't get damaged. On its side in the sink. Now let's have a really good look. This is the lead We've got very little purple showing there, but that lead got broken. I didn't do it, it was done on transport. But we've got an eye there. Those leaves aren't brilliant, but they're not all like that. Yeah? Not prepared to keep leaves like that. They've been damaged in the past. That looks like probably bug damage followed by an infection. So I'm certainly not keeping any of that. That's going, definitely. Is it worth potting that? It's got an eye. So you have to bear in mind that because it's the older part of the plant, these are older roots, but they're not dead. They're not dead. Not brilliant, but they're not dead. But the ends of them are. Where's my sharp stuff? Yep, that's green. I'll have to think, but trying to pot a single bulb, you can't wire it. So what I've got is 14 inches of pseudo bulb with two huge strappy leaves and no means of holding it in the pot without a stake. You have to bear in mind the blooms on this are pretty stunning, very, very fragrant, but that would need a new growth followed by another one before it can get to blooming size. So you'd probably be looking at 2 years. But in bloom, this would fetch a reasonable price. Next thought, have I got somewhere where I can have a small clay pot, stop it falling over with any luck, extra stop it falling over, yeah, where I can hold on to that for the length of time it would take to get back to blooming size. I will put it to one side. I'm not dumping it yet. Right, so definitely dumping that bit, aren't we? Yeah, there's no viable eyes on there at all. There's a possibility of one there, but it's shriveled. It's not going to go. So that's no good. This bit, another 2 pseudo bulbs. One's got a single leaf and the other 2 leaves are appalling. I doubt if these leaves even photosynthesize much anymore. They've sort of lost their colouring and everything. There is an eye there that's green. It's not gone. But that would be an ugly plant to pot. But it's got a rhizome. Yeah? So what we could do is that. So this single bulb on its own could get strapped to these 2, which would be wired into a pot. And it would not need to be a big pot, because I can keep these pseudo bulbs very close together. And then if they do shoot out, it will stay a compact plant as far as its base is concerned. It's still going to rocket skywards. Right, thought time. I might deal with those 3. We're not keeping that bit, that's got to go. So I can stay in there with the rubbish. Now what am I going to do with this pot? I'm sure you're all thinking, well, you're going to take it away and totally clean it and totally sterilise it. Why would I want to do that? Well, in case you transfer anything from one plant to another. What plant do you think's going back in there? The one that's just come out of it. So it's going to go back into exactly the same pot as it was in before with new media. So there's no need to mess about with that. I'm not even going to bother cleaning the algae off. Well, actually, I might give that a bit of a scrub. Tidy it up a bit. Right, so we've got one bit of rubbish, potentially a 2 pseudobulb piece and a single pseudobulb piece to see if I can get them to shoot out. But first priority is to deal with what I came out with, which is to get this plant set up in a new pot. And there's, you know, that's going to look a bit silly in there for now, but you can see the length between the rhizomes is quite large. It's going to fill that pot quite quickly. This is a very vigorous Cattleya. So while I've got it out, sheaths off. Kit off, come on, get your kits off. And there we go, we don't want any hidey holes. And this plant at one point had some scale on it. Well, it hasn't anymore. They've all gone. So I'm winning on that front too. Right. So underneath the sheath is this sort of film, which is just like, it's like paper. And it can be a nuisance to get off, but if it stays there it's not too much of a big deal because it's totally transparent, and if any bugs get in underneath that I'll see them a mile off. So I won't worry too much about that for now. That's not bad, that's nicely cleaned up. Right, so that's the piece we're going to deal with. I'll have a bit of a tidy up. I'll have another think about those 3 pseudobulbs, the 2 and the 1, and get rid of the piece we don't want and sort myself out. And as I usually say, I'll be back. Okay, now I know this is going to seem silly that that big thing over there is going to go in a small pot and this little piece here is going to go in a big pot. But this piece I'm definitely keeping. So that's going in the best pot because it's going to be around a while. Now this is going to be a little bit fiddly because the height of the plant needs to be right, so that I can work out where the wire is going to go, because the amount of rhizome I've got this time, I will only be able to use one wire, so it's got to be a good one, it's got to be right. And I need to go incredibly careful pushing that down to where I want it to be and not damaging the roots. So I need the back of that plant right up against the back of the pot. So where can I get a wire where it's going to do the most good? I think those 2 holes there. Right, so that's those 2 there. Right. This is not my thickest wire, but it will do for this. Right, so we need a piece in through there. Wrong way round, don't be silly. You want the long piece on the inside of the pot, not the outside. All I need on the outside is enough to be able to go up over the top and bend the end in so that I don't catch my fingers on it. Now obviously the other end has got to be able to go through that hole, but the first job now is to get this plant at the right height, and to do that I've now got to take the media out again so that those roots don't get bent or damaged getting the plant where I want it to be, which is right up against the back there. I'd like it sort of sitting quite near the top of the pot, but there's nothing going to grow behind this point, so that can go literally right up against the pot, which means some of these roots are already touching the pot, and we already know that these roots on this plant do really like to attach themselves. So now I can gently move the plant, watching those new roots, and get some down in behind, so that I don't have to worry about doing that in a minute. Now gently all in round those other roots over to the side, and very loosely around where those new roots are. No pushing, no shoving. It's a Cattleya. If there's air holes, it doesn't matter. But I do want to make sure I have got a bit in under these new roots so that they can grab hold of something quite quickly. The faster they grab hold of something, the more vigorous they will grow. The plant now needs to stay quite still because those delicate new roots are now in the media. Not on it, they're in it. So I can worry about topping the pot up after I get the wire in place, but I've got to hold this very still from this point forward. Now, which hole did we choose? That one or that one? There's my new growth there, so it's got to be that one. So round there. See, if we had that third hand, if that had already happened, I'd now be holding my plant with that hand, leaving me two to get on and do my job. Maybe one day. Right, I'm going to tip that very, very slightly so that the new growth is slightly proud. So I've just seen another big gap, which I want to get out now before I pull the wire. And that's about it. Now, as soon as I tug on this, that plant should be firm. Pliers, grab hold of the wire and ease the pliers against the side of the pot. Are we tight yet? No. So do it again. Go back to the pliers and ease it against the side of the pot. If you do this too hard, you'll crack your pot. Still a little bit of movement there, so I'm going to pull a bit harder. That's pretty good. One more little tug, followed by a twist, so that it can't go back in there and loosen up again. Alright, so that's the wire done. As I say, I've only got a piece of rhizome big enough to actually get one wire across this time round, but one will be enough. Quite firm. It's not absolutely rigid, but it's quite firm. And then we'll just push that media back away from that new growth so it's not touching. No pushing down, just loose. It's a Cattleya. It will grab hold of things and gradually, with any luck, that will now fill that pot with roots, and the latest new growth is absolutely dead center in the pot. Perfect. So whichever direction it goes next, it's got room. I'm just going to put a bit more bark in just to level the top up. As you saw before, this does have a habit of roots going out in all flipping directions. So that's it. Good watering now. The plant was pretty well hydrated. It was only watered yesterday. So internally the plant is quite hydrated. But being in the large bark in a holy clay pot, obviously it appears to dry quite quickly. Well, it doesn't appear to, it does. So that's one done. You can have the label. Actually, you're not having that manky label. Let's do a new one. I can't believe I did that. I haven't had this plant a huge amount of time. I think it's 2 years-ish. Or coming up to 2 years. Could be 3, I suppose. But I haven't used those tags for ages. I don't like them anymore. Basically, I don't like them because, can you read that? And you certainly can't read it from a distance because black on dark green don't work. Black on white does. So that's the main part of the plant done. That's the bit I wanted to do. Now we look at what we're going to do with the rest of it, if anything. Right, let's have another look at them, see what we got. We got two. Quite sure that this plant has done that several times, just slightly split there. Seems to be the weight of the leaf, can't quite cope with that seam. Now this is the one where there is potentially a new eye. And most of those roots aren't bad, but if I cut them all off I won't have anything to grab hold of, so I'm just going to leave them, apart from the ones that are blatantly obviously gone. Get in there, thank you. Yeah, that one's gone. It's gone at the end anyway. That'll do. That's all I'm going to do with that. The only other thing I'm going to do with that is the old cinnamon on the rhizome. I'd already done the other one before we started on the I keep calling it the main plant, the little bit. We just put some cinnamon on there to just dry it off a bit. Never known that, you know, before I'd ever heard of doing the cinnamon thing. I'd never had a problem with Cattleya types before then. Right, the first thing we've got to do here is get that ugly bit of rhizome off there that's serving no purpose at all. We don't need that bit. And what about that bit? Is it worth taking that back? You can take a bit more of it off. Hardly anything left to cut, quite honestly. But that bit of rhizome looks a bit brown around the edges. That looks as though there's had a bit of rot in there at some point. So we'll have that back a bit. See if we can find some clean tissue. Not as clean as a whistle, but better than it was. Right, now here we have a lot of dead roots on this one. This is the oldest part of the plant, apart from the 2 bits we threw away. So it's going to be a bit of a hack here. Stay. Ones that fall off in your hand are obviously gone. And I can't deal with this lot. So the first thing that's going to happen is haircut. Remember, it's a branching root system. If any of these roots are live, they will branch. That looks a bit more handleable. Now we can start picking on the really manky ones like this one. Work on what's left. You're no good. Condemned. There's a lot of these aren't very good at all, but they're firmer near the base. It seems to be the ends that have gone. There's a very serious bit of damage there. There's no point in leaving it beyond that point. So we'll take that back to there. Damage there as well. That's gone. That one's gone. Not a lot left. Goodness knows what that is. Oh, dead bit of root. That one's gone. Oh, that one's already been cut off. See, it knew it was doomed. It just committed suicide. That's about it. It's not brilliant, that bit. That bit's damaged. Take it back. Right, so this plant, this piece of plant, has got 2 triggers now. Its little hormones will be busying away inside the plant, thinking, where the hell's my root system gone? And what happened to that nice shiny bit of new growth I had at the front of the plant? We'd better do something. And hopefully the do something will trigger the dormant eyes to grow. Because without some new growth now, this plant has no hope of survival. So that's the theory. Get the little hormones to trigger that damage has occurred. I mean, obviously my other hobby is bonsai. I mean, that eye looks pretty good there. That may well grow. And that one don't look bad. If I can get a growth off of each of those bulbs, I'll be over the moon. But with the bonsai, with the trees, you trigger things on trees. On a tree, all the branches want to be the top of the tree. And that's where the energy gets pushed. Yeah? And it will leave older bits behind and almost sacrifice them on the grounds that the bigger and wider the top of the tree can get, the more photosynthesis can take place to feed the tree. Yeah? In addition to that, as it gets bigger, it thinks to itself, I'm getting a bit wobbly here, we need a load of new roots. They work together. So as that apex progresses, more roots. Yeah? And you can trick a tree by actually taking out a lot of the apex, and it'll think, damage, damage, I need new growth, and it'll push new growth out lower down, or put more energy into lower branches. Well, they're all plants, all got similar mechanisms. Right, we need a bit of the apple pie sauce. Got quite a few cuts on this one. Poor old thing's been hacked a bit. I don't normally do this, but this plant potentially can earn me some money next time if and when it gets some new growths and decides to bloom. Yeah, just caught any plant. Well, I've already done that one, haven't I? Right, so we've got those three to now try and get in that tiny little pot, which with that big dead root system looked impossible. Well, it's not impossible now. But in a small pot like that, Mr. Rock's going in the bottom again. Just try and give it a bit of stability because this is going to be wobbly. Now we've got to, first job, make sure the eyes are going to point outwards. The eyes have it, by the way. So that is there. That is there. So both of that, that's the outside of the plant, needs to point towards the edge. And the new eye on there is there. So that can go around the other side of the plant and point in the opposite direction. Let's just tangle the roots a minute. Right. Next job is to hold that as it is. Now I haven't got any strapping stuff, so I'm just going to wrap a bit of wire around there. I just want those pieces to stay where they are while I muck about in the pot. So I'm just gently wrapping a piece of wire around just to hold them at the right height and together, basically. That's what that's for. Right, I'll put those down now. I'm not going to have anywhere near enough bark. I'll just pop out and get some more bark. I'll be back. Right, that's Elvis scoffing away in the background. That's it. Show your bottom to everyone, won't you? Right, now I can only get one wire in, and I've only got one piece of rhizome because that's a single pseudo bulb. There's nothing to grab hold of. So I've actually lowered the wire down there to hold them together. This isn't tight, it's not cutting in. And I put another piece up there so that they're nice and firm and they're not going to move around. And then when I put a piece of wire through that gap onto that piece of rhizome, I should be able to hold it in the pot. That's my theory. But I need to position the plant in a place where the wire can do the most good. Am I going to get... No, I hate to do this, but the rock's going to have to come out. Because the roots are long enough that the rock's in the way, which is good. You know, I know they're not all brilliant roots, but hopefully we will get some life out of some of these roots. Right, where's my bark? So again, I only need to just drop this down underneath the plant so that when the wire pulls, it pulls onto something and not thin air. Don't need to go mad. Just get something in under the base. Do coming up a little bit, that plant, so we'll put a bit more in and lift the plant gently. Obviously it's going to lower itself in the pot when I start pulling on the wire, and now would probably be a reasonable time to get the wire in. Grab hold. Yes, you are. Ooh, wonderful. That's not bad. For such a tall, straggly plant, that's quite rigid. That will help get a new root system, he says as it all falls over. It's not going to be good, is it? Well, the only thing I can think to do is, at the moment, is I haven't got another large holy clay pot. I'm out. But what I have got is something I can stand it in so that it doesn't move. But first job is get that wire a bit tighter. If the plant can move that much, then the wire is not tight enough. So I'm just testing it, see which way it's going to fall, and then I'll move the plant to stop it. A bit more that way. That's about it. Give it one last tug. One last tug. It's not bad, it's not brilliant, but the pot's staying upright even with a little bit of tipping. And I'm tipping it to its tip point and it's flopping back upright again. So I think that will do. And I'll show you a little trick actually. If you've done all your pulling and tugging and you think you've got your wire nice and tight, whoops, you knocked my wine over there, be trouble. It's a hanging offence. What you can do is go back into the pot where the wire is and get your pliers and put a kink in it. Just literally twist it like that. And that will pull it tight, and if the wire is strong enough it will stay there. See, now that is totally rigid now, just a little twist. That's all I've done, is just put an S shape in it. Right, now we can put a bit more bark in. Not a lot, we don't want to be up over the top of the rhizome, but we do have quite a lot of... What is that? That is not bark! Ugh! Quality control. Lack of it. But I do have some roots hanging out here that would probably do better being in something rather than just sat on the top. So we've got a little bit of lopsided media at the moment. The media is higher on one side of the pot, but round the back of the rhizome there is no point in having media there. It's probably not going to grow roots, but if those eyes push it might. So there we go, just about upright, just about not too wobbly, and it may grow, but with a bloom like that, and more importantly the fragrance that this has got, if and when that shoots out and I can get it to bloom, it's very sellable. You've only got to get somebody to get their nose near that bloom, apart from its size and colour. You've only got to get somebody's nose near that bloom and they'll just want it. It's just stunning. It's freesias, if I remember rightly. Yes, it smells of freesias, and it's the one that I always say no messing about. It's not like freesias, it smells of freesias. It's spot on. If you've ever grown those lovely little bulbs, I used to have those in the garden at my other house. So there we go, we got one pot full of bits that may or may not shoot out. It's just about stable, not brilliant. And then we have our piece with our new roots and our new growth, with plenty of room to grow all across that pot. I'd predict I may get at least 2 years, possibly 3, before that's going to hang out the side of the pot again. As I say, with a Cattleya that's this vigorous, it's not the media breaking down that's the problem, it's the getting out of, growing over the pot that's the problem. Anyway, I hope you enjoyed the hammer joke. There's no way I'm breaking a holy clay pot. The only way one of those is going to break is as a result of an accident, not on purpose, that's for sure. So we'll see what happens. This piece I'm sure is going to grow on. It'll have a little bit of a stall at the moment, but its energy is going into that new growth and those new roots. So I don't think it's going to stall much, if at all. It should get going again now. And both of the bulbs behind it have got a good pair of quality leaves to feed the plant from the top end down. My job is to feed it from the bottom end up. Right, we'll see how those do. Thanks for dropping by.